Welcome to the Dream Life is Real Life podcast with your host, Hannah Hermanson, bringing you real-life stories of people who realized their dreams to educate and inspire you to create your legacy of abundance now.
Welcome back, everyone. Today, we are with Heath Armstrong. Heath is a raging maniac, gremlin smasher, and creative writer. He is the author of The Sweet Ass Journal to Develop Your Happiness Muscle in 100 Days, the creator of the Sweet Ass Domination deck, Affirmations to Motivate Your Creative Manic Mind, and the host of the Never Stop Peaking podcast. Welcome to the show, Heath.
What's up, Hannah? Whenever you say like creative maniac, it always makes me laugh.
Yes, I was going to ask you, break this down for us. What does a raging maniac, gremlin smasher, creative writer do? What's your story?
I think the best thing for anybody, especially who's interested in developing themselves or creating a brand or whatever it is to just be completely different. And I always look at creativity as like this beautiful thing that we all have, this power that really, if you think about it, it's a power that it's really the only power that gods and humans share in between. It's the power to create. And we can bring things to life that live long after we do and influence others long after we do. But it's this whole paradigm of we all feel like we need to be motivated to do things. But I feel like we all have so much energy and motivation inside of us already that when we're born, all these layers are stacked on top of us. And we forget how much rage can be a really good thing. We have to actually go for passion and creativity. And so it becomes a life of trying to peel those layers back to find out that weird, unique kid that we used to be. And then using those skill sets in the way that we thought as a child to bring what our passion is back into the world again. So rage creating is like breaking that habit of hesitating. Instead of thinking and planning about all these things that I want to do to be creative, it's about that intuitive feeling that you get in your gut to just say, oh, I like this feeling. This feels right. And just do it. Like within a couple seconds, make the decision to move forward in that. Because I think there's this world with so many distractions that come in and they knock us off our focus in just a couple seconds. But there's not a lot of things out there that help us refocus in just a couple seconds. And the biggest one is our ability to just break our habit of hesitation. Ooh. And so that's kind of the whole thing about rage creating. Just do it, So.
This is so timely. So we're recording now at the end of January, and one of my New Year intentions, I wouldn't say resolutions, but my intention was to stop using the word try. Yoda says there is no try, only do. Because I was chatting with someone who had been a smoker for 20 years, quote unquote, addicted to nicotine. And they were telling the story about just deciding to quit. I've tried to quit my whole life. And then one day I was like, I'm just not a smoker. And I haven't smoked since, because my whole life I was trying to figure out, how do I maybe this? And I gave myself way too much leniency, hesitation perhaps, and I wasn't quitting. And so one day I just quit. And, they talked about the power of stopping the try and just making decisions. So
the mind is a powerful thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And so are the words that we use to create.
That Definitely. You can... It comes down to when you eat too. Something that I've always noticed is if I'm eating something that's got sugar in it, or the world would look at it as being terrible for you, and I think that it's terrible for me, then I'm going to feel terrible after I eat it, and it's going to affect everything. But I've noticed now, and I'm ultimately a very healthy person the way that I approach food, because I used to not be healthy in any way, and I used to be a really raging alcoholic and all these things that affected me, addictive personality type. But now I can pull something in that everybody would say that's not good for you, and I can eat it and be like, this is great for me in this moment, and then I don't feel bad afterwards. And it's kind of it's all in the head. It's just it's like the reverse placebo effect, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was mentioning to you before we started recording, I've been traveling through Mexico a lot, and I used to be vegan, and I had an eating disorder. I've just been I have never had a really healthy relationship with food. But I was talking to my holistic health friend. And I was like, oh, I'm worried about getting sick down there. And she's like, well, just decide to not get sick. And as you're eating things, literally tell yourself, like, my body is only taking what it needs from this. Like, if this isn't clean, it doesn't affect me. I'm just being nourished right now. And, I didn't say that all of the time, but I didn't get sick. And I had a way more confident relationship with eating street food from random places. So I feel you. I can relate. So you mentioned
totally
something.
Real.
Yeah, definitely. One of the questions I had for you when I was reading this, and something that just kind of came up in something you said, was, I was curious if you've always been this way. Have you always thought about your power to create and smash gremlins as almost like a godlike figure, as you mentioned? Or how did you come to start controlling your thoughts or perceiving your abilities in this way?
Yeah, one thing, just for people that keep hearing the word gremlin that don't know what the hell we're talking about, I have used the term gremlin to sort of personify what these forces are that keep us from creating, which are things like resistance or fear or procrastination. Because I feel like when I was coming through this transition, when I felt like I got activated in the world and that I needed to make mass changes, resistance usually just suppresses us, and it suppresses our creativity. I mean, it is the death of creativity, but to become our highest self, we have to be creative. Therefore, we must destroy resistance. But I started noticing that it wasn't necessarily about making a decision to just destroy resistance, but more so on noticing when it was happening and being able to separate yourself from it and realizing that it's not a part of you. And so I started personifying resistance and fear and procrastination by saying, oh, this is just a gremlin. So I'll be like, oh, it kind of turns into a game. I'm like, oh, if I'm driving my car and like somebody gets in a wreck in front of me and I'm stuck in traffic or something, oh, this is just a gremlin screwing with me. Like, it's fine. And it doesn't make me part of the situation. So then I'm not pulling my rage into the situation and getting upset about it, because it's completely like the witness. Pull yourself out externally, view the situation and move through it. So by doing that, by talking about resistance gremlins and fear gremlins, it's kind of funny the latching on that has happened with it between people that I teach or those who have the journal or the deck around the world, and them actually sending out messages about like, oh, the resistance gremlins tried to attack, but they couldn't because I defeated them. So that's kind of where the gremlin term comes from. But no, I wasn't. I feel like internally, I was always like, everybody is willing to do that in this lifetime or meant to do it. But I went to school and majored in construction because
I didn't know that's even an option.
Yeah. So because I grew up in Tennessee, it was like the one thing that was not that hard to major in, but you would have a higher job placement rate, like in pay. So like, that's what I was thinking about, because that's what you're kind of taught, is to go get the job that has the money. You probably hear that a lot from entrepreneurs that have made transitions. It's not that uncommon. So I did that. And I was thinking about this yesterday, because I actually did a Facebook topic of how I got to where I'm at. And I realized that you never know how, because like Mike Dooley, who I'm a big fan of, he talks about how manifesting your dream life is more about, it's kind of like a GPS system to where you can put your final destination in, so you know where you want to go. Like, you have this vision. And I felt like I always wanted freedom, or I wanted to be working for myself, because the things that made me feel so miserable were working for somebody else and not understanding why I had to do things the way somebody else was telling me to do it, or not understanding why when I take a job in construction and I'm in industry and I have this house, with 4 bedrooms and cars and whatever, that I thought it would take me my whole life to reach. I did that by the time I was like 24, how miserable and depressed I felt, and he talks about manifesting is that you can put your vision into a GPS, the end, you start with the end point, but then you also have to start where you're at. But in between, you don't really know what's going to happen ever. And you cannot focus on the how of what's going to happen. You just have to take general action in the direction of where you're going. And you start to notice things as you go. And that's kind of what my process has been like. Because like, if you're driving a car and you're halfway to your destination on a route you've never been to before, then the whole way you're looking at houses and things like that and thinking, oh, that's kind of nice, or that's kind of ugly, but I've never seen it. And you're just absorbing, and maybe you notice something that comes to play back into your life again after that. But you don't ever know that you're achieving what you're achieving until you actually get to the place that you're going, or you're manifesting your vision. And once you're there, it's like, whoa, you can look back and think that whole journey was kind of crazy. And you can look at the how of the way things worked out, but you can't do it internally. So I turned into I got really depressed, and I tried to start 2 or 3 different types of companies in the process. I mean, I was working in a factory for $13 an hour, making concrete structures to drain sewage, like when people poop and pee, goes into these structures. And if anybody knows me, you're going to think how in the hell did you
survive
do that job? Yeah. And the truth was I was dying inside. It was miserable. And because of that, I just did things to numb my perspective, which I got to the point where I was drinking an entire 5th of liquor every single day and functioning and still being able to work and move up in my job. But nothing was fulfilling me. So I quit my first job to try to start a website company. But then I realized that I didn't know anything about making websites or selling websites or building a company. So that failed. And I had to get another job in the same industry because it's the only thing I knew how to make money doing. And so then I found one that allowed me to work from home. But then I realized that I actually wasn't working from home at all. I was driving 8 to 10 hours a day and going to job sites at midnight or 3 a.m. every single day. Alcoholic situation or anything like that. And during that process, I became very desperate, and I had a couple rock bottom moments. And I woke up face down outside of my house. My car was running in the front yard, and I honestly didn't know if I would have enough energy to just get up and walk to shut my car off. It was that bad. And I didn't really remember what happened the last couple days, but it wasn't until that point when I thought, I could have easily died. And is that what I was trying to do? Was I trying to kill myself in some weird way? Was I that miserable? And I pulled my phone out about 2 hours after that. I was just laying and just, sulking, feeling bad for myself and things that we do when we're depressed. And it was the first time I realized that Apple put the podcasting app on the phones manually. It was the new update put that on there, and I opened it up and I heard a podcast with a woman named Amber Ludwig, who is now married. So her last name's Vilhauer, but it was about her journey from going from depression to creating this website business. And it was really close to what I felt like my story was in the beginning. Everything that she said before she had made it successful felt a lot like the position that I was in. And she had mentioned hey, if anybody's out there, just wants any advice or whatever, just reach out to me. And so I'm so introverted that I never would ever reach out to somebody, but I did. And she responded, and her response meant the entire world to me, which is why it's so important that you're doing this podcast to get to new people, to help them understand that there are things like this that happen, and you can make a difference in your life and other people's lives. And so she responded and was like, I want to talk to you on the phone. And I'm like, what? So then she calls me, and long story short, at that point, she's like, I really believe in you, and I think you can do these amazing things, and you can get out of this alcoholism and all this stuff. And I want to introduce you to 2 people. So she did. She introduced me to Hal Elrod, who wrote The Miracle Morning, some of you may have heard of. And I immediately implemented that. And then she introduced me to a guy named Paul Kemp, who was doing a big podcast called The App Guy. Paul ended up teaching me how to podcast, which is what triggered my entire turnaround, because I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, what's the point? If I feel like this, where do I want to be? So I took that vision of who I wanted to be. I knew the end result. I wanted to work for myself.
GPS.
Yeah, I plugged it into the GPS. I'm like, I want to work for myself, and I want to travel the world, because I'd never been out of the country. I didn't travel growing up because my family didn't have any money. I just always was in Tennessee. And how do I do that? So I was like, well, I'll just start interviewing people that are creative, that that do those things and just ask them how they do it. And so that's what I did. That show was called The Artsy Now Show. I don't do it anymore, but the second interview was with a Hollywood director who had just won the New York International, or the New York Film Festival. I think it was one of the big film festivals, and he won for like the best indie film or something. And it was just amazing that he wanted to talk to me, and like the conversation was so brilliant and inspiring, and I was hooked from that point on. And I just started taking all of those different things that I learned from the people that I interviewed and plugging them into a system for myself. And once I figured out how to do that and started seeing massive changes, I also was meeting other people through that process that were helping me try out different businesses. And yeah, I failed 2 more businesses after that in that process, but eventually I was able to, I moved across the country. I did my first 6-figure month within a year of starting that 4th business. And everything was just like the most surreal thing because I just dedicated myself to it and really just continued to learn from other people, really. I mean, I don't really take credit for any of it. It was just, people are so nice. Like if you really believe in people, it's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. The power of connection is just like screaming at me as you're talking about this. And, you know, you had a miraculous encounter that led you to this podcast and sort of those first introductions that you mentioned. So how do you continue as an introvert and maybe someone who didn't know a whole lot about the entrepreneurial space? Like, how did you continue to put yourself out there? Were there like tactical strategies, or did you talk the gremlins down when maybe you got intimidated and had that, like, why does this guy want to talk to me? Talk to us about the mindset of continuing that connection game.
Oh, I love mindset. One thing that I figured out really early was the power of the mind. And I got really into it because I'm still to this day, I get and I think there's a lot of like famous comedians and speakers that'll tell you they throw up every single time before they do it. It never goes away. Like those gremlins are always there. And it's just a matter of being able to ignore them and move through it and know that it's going to be better on the other side. And so I started doing all these really weird things that were making my mind stronger. Just testing challenges of like, okay, first thing I did was I just cold turkey gave up alcohol. And I was like, I'm going to do this. Like every single day, I'm going to check in and check out of this process. And there were several other habits that I implemented as well. But the most effective part of it was picking my vision of the person I wanted to become and making sure that I was taking action in that direction. So I got a note card, and every single day I wrote down, this was in between me deciding that I was going to try to figure out a way to leave my job and to actually leave it. I wrote down the date that I wanted a job by, and it was before I had that 4th business. And on the back of it, I wrote down, I am location independent and I work for myself. And I could get really specific with the goals too, which I think is perfect for some people, but not necessarily for others. I don't know if you ever look at human design or anything like that, but there's so many different types of people, and what works for you isn't necessarily the same amongst the board. But what is certain is that if you pay attention to where you're going, and you really pay attention and your intentions are in alignment with your attention, then it's going to be magical and you're going to create those visions and bring them to reality. So I wrote down my affirmations every day, the date that I was going to leave my job by, and 2 things that I was going to do that day to move towards that. It sounds very simple, but it's insanely effective. And I did that every single day. And you know what? On June 22nd, 2016, which was the date that I'd been writing for over a year, I was sitting across the country with a business. I had sold everything I had. I paid off all my debt, and it was the most freeing, amazing feeling. So I took that and I kept doing more challenges. So I was like, how do I expand this? And I created this like habit tracking system just on a general spreadsheet. And for me, I know that there's apps out there that help you track habits, and everybody has their preference. But for me, I'm very pen and paper. And I created these charts where basically I would put habits that I was working on. Like if I'm taking a cold shower every day for 100 days, and I do it in 100-day spurts because I don't think you should wait till the beginning of the year to start your resolutions. And I think anything over 100 days is a little too long, but anything under, like if you say 21 days to make a habit, I don't believe that works for me. Maybe other people, but it's a very short time to create a habit. And in 100 days, you can track it by 1%. So if I'm on day 70 and I've only done 50 of the day, I know I'm only 50% of the way there. You know what I mean? But I can get to a maximum of 80% if I do the next 30 days. And the goal of the 100-day system, am I breaking up for you at all? I hope not.
We're sounding good right now. Yeah, I'm with you.
So my goal for the 100 days is to be somewhere in between that 60 to 80% effective range. So it's not overwhelming. There's too many things out there that make us feel overwhelming to do habits. If you could just be 60 to 80% effective for a 100-day period, you're much more likely to create that habit. And I've done this over and over again, and I still do it. I mean, I'm on day 20 something of my current 100-day streak, but I have this spreadsheet, and I wake up and there's 5 columns across the top, and they are the habits or the projects I'm working on right now. One of them might be something as simple as drink 1 gallon of water per day for health benefits. And the other one might be write 1 hour a day for my writing career or whatever. Anything that you're doing, it can be something like that. And then I initial in every single morning that I am reviewing them. And then at night I initial out, and then I up it 1% if I completed it that day. And it is insane. It's like the thing that continues to carry me through everything else, because I know I'm being effective in every single moment with intention, and it's aligned with everything that I want it to be. So,
and you're also taking the like emotion, or the, I don't feel like it, or I'm going to wait till I'm inspired, or I don't want to, right? Like that emotional aspect that so many times keeps us in our comfort zone or tells us to put it off a little bit longer. Like, no, like you got to check the box. It's about just getting it done and moving past that like hesitation.
It's
like
the action.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of us, if we don't do that, we get stuck in this whole idea that life is about what happens to us. And then we don't do things because we are like, oh, that happened or this happened. But the reality is that life isn't about what happens to you. And it's not about the beauty that happens. And it's not about the bullshit that happens. It's about exactly how you react when it happens. So we can take that silver lining and we can learn from an experience and use it as motivation to move closer to the dreams, which would be something like taking that step by using your charts or doing your habits with your app or whatever you're using. Or we can let the stress gremlins have a disco party in our brains, which may or may not end up with us face down, pants down in the bushes with a bottle of empty hooch in our hands. So it just comes down to that decision of if we're willing to do it or not.
Wow. So I actually haven't really heard of a system quite like this. I'm super intrigued. I'm curious if this is the same sort of tracking system that's inside of the Sweet Ass Journal.
Okay. So the journal is a little bit more basic, but it actually, you can get this habit tracker. If you go to heatharmstrong.com/track your habits, you can download the spreadsheet and make it your own. Yeah, there should be an explanation video on there, I think. I haven't looked at it in a minute, but a while. A minute doesn't sound like very long, does it? But there's an explanation on there. There's actually a video too, if you go to the resources section, that explains it more thoroughly. If anybody wants to use it, it's free and it works. But the journal is also in 100 days. I do this particularly for a reason, because with the journal, every single day you could track 1%. The spreadsheet that I'm talking about is something that I kind of modified off of. Do you know Honoré Corder?
I don't know.
She's the author of over 30 books, probably. She's mentored me a little bit. She has something called short-term massive action, which is like a networking thing that she uses. But I realized that's how I learned the 100-day thing. I was like, oh, this is so clever, because you can track it 1%. It's really easy to know what kind of percentage of effectiveness you're having. And when you don't get that 1% every day, if you're like me, you're like, fuck.
Soul crushing. Yeah.
But you can do, the beautiful thing about it is you twice the amount of work the next day and make it up if you want. So do 2 hours of writing instead of 1 or whatever. But with the journal, I wanted to make something that isn't overwhelming. And so it's not a dated journal to where you feel like you're going to fall off track if you miss one day. it really is made to just get through 100 days of journaling and not necessarily 100 days in a row, because it's really impossible to get with life in the way that it happens. It's really hard to do this 100 days in a row.
Right.
I had people tell me that they did it, but I've never officially done it myself. But I had like 6 different parts of a journal, and it was all of the different sections of the journal were based off of things that I learned from interviewing these people around the world. And I put it into a system to actually develop happiness, because I noticed that a lot of them were tied to that aspect. If you're productive, it makes you happier sometimes. If you are focusing on gratitude and compassion, it makes you happier. If you're focusing on like your accomplishments, it makes you happier. If you feel like you're organized with what you're working towards, then it makes you happier. If you're giving gifts every day, it makes you happier. And so if you can accomplish some of those things a day, maybe I can't say every single day. If you can accomplish some of those things almost every single day over a period of time, then you're going to move in the best direction. And even if you only do 10%, you're still 10% better than you were, right?
10% happier. Yeah.
So, yeah. So the journal, the first time I made it was because my dog peed all over the little 6 different types of journals that I was using to track all these different things. And he never went to the bathroom in the house ever. And I was like, oh, God, you gotta be kidding. So my coach at the time, Jacqueline Duplessis, she's amazing. She's like, you got to put this into a system for people to use. And I was like, that sounds so hard. I don't know. I can't do it. No one's going to want to read this or use it. And I started looking at all the different types of journals that I had used. And I realized very quickly that most of them feel very worksheety. Like there's like lines, you have to fill in these lines. Like, and if you don't fill in all the lines, you feel like you're a failure. And so I was like, what about creative people who like don't really, I mean, some days I want to write 30 lines and other days I just want to write one word. And so I came up with the idea, or draw a picture. And so I made it like a mosaic layout. So you have all these different sections. It's broken into like a morning routine and an evening routine. And I made it mosaic so that you can do those things. Like if you want to write one word, you can. If you want to draw a picture of a flower, you can. And if you want to write a whole bunch and pack it in there, you totally can. And I think that's what's made it so popular among people, is because it really isn't overwhelming. And now, you know, being somebody who thought nobody would ever want to use it, I get constantly tagged from around the world. And I'm often questioning how they even get it in some of these places that they live. I'm like, how did you get a journal down there? Like, I don't even know how that was possible. But the premise of the journal is to set a vision at the beginning of your 100 days. And you can pick probably around 3 things. They can be personal or business. And then you want to create these habits over that period to not only make yourself happier, but to also move in the direction of those visions. So you set the 100-day vision, and then you kind of set the vibe for your day by doing some gratitude and smiling practices. And then you set your daily to move towards that vision at the end of the 100-day period. And then there's a section for idea brainstorming, which was really based off of James Altucher's idea muscle. I'm a big fan of that. It's where you just pick a random topic and you generate ideas. And that just teaches you a skill set of being creative on the spot, which was going to help you in so many different aspects of life. And then we get into some other things that I found really helpful in my journey, which are like minimalism, eliminating distractions physically and digitally, and with your community around you, to basically get rid of the emotional and physical things that are not serving your higher purpose, and then to fill that void back up with value. And then the practice of giving a gift every day, which is perhaps the greatest thing you could possibly do to increase your happiness. Not necessarily physical gifts either. I'm talking about like services or even treating yourself to something amazing.
Sending and then at the encouragement.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like those little things do everything. And then on the end, like at night, you're celebrating your wins for the day. And I write down everything, like legitimately. If I brush my teeth, I'm writing that down, because you will be surprised about how much we actually accomplish in a day. And I think some people just need to see that. Like, you might think you did nothing, but when you start writing down everything you did throughout the day, you'll realize that you did a lot. Even if you were sitting there watching shows, just write down how many shows you watched. Whoa, that's a lot of shows. And then you were reflecting on the whole process, and there's some stuff with meditation. But that's basically the idea of it. It's just this process where you work on those different areas of your life throughout a 100-day period and see how it affects you in the long run.
Absolutely. So I love this because you're talking about creating habits. And so often I think that we look at that end goal, at what it's at the end of the GPS, and we think that it's linear, it's step by step, first this, then that. When what I've realized in my entrepreneurial journey is that it's about developing successful habits. It's not about like achieving the success, but it's about, every single day celebrating your wins. And so many of the strategies you just shared are things that I've done, right? Like I have a gratitude journal, right? I'm like in this 6 journal thing, just waiting for my dog to pee on it. But in, little isolated ways, like expressing 3 gratitudes of, all this stuff. But I think that it's so important for entrepreneurs especially to start really measuring, documenting the habits that are going to peak their performance, that are going to accelerate their happiness. Because so often we think like, oh, okay, visualization's not working anymore, so I'm not going to do that. But it's the consistency in our daily habits that turn around and have us sitting in our dream life on June 22nd, 2016. Okay, it's not like a secret or a blueprint, people. It's developing muscles like you're talking about.
It's a very old system and it's a very effective one for a reason. It's basically just paying attention constantly to that person you want to become, and your thoughts do become things, and you attract who you are and you affirm the life that you are going to live. And if we let these experiences in life motivate us instead of cripple us, then we spend a lot more time on top of that serenity throne and a lot less time at the bottom of a couch crushed rabbit hole watching Jerry Springer with our hands down our pants and slaying a fried chicken. It doesn't change the world and nobody wants to see it anyways.
But there's a set of daily habits that lead us to that outcome as well. And it's like, why not choose the ones that are going to drive you to the right destination?
Nobody's perfect. Like it comes down to this basic thing. Like you cannot become your highest self and accomplish your highest visions or that magical beast that you were born to be on this that is activated. And if you're listening to this, you probably are, because you are listening, then you have to make those changes. Like you're not going to just sit stalemate. Like you're activated. You have to make those decisions to move forward. And just imagine how good it feels to be in those habits. Like I do these cold showers, and it's the winter right now, obviously, but I take a normal shower and then I breathe like really heavy 30 to 40 breaths in the normal shower. And then as soon as I'm done with that, I crank it to as cold as it can go. And I do that for 30 seconds every day. And doing that allows, not to mention all the health benefits for it. Obviously, there's so many, and people might think it's crazy, but like that's not the point of it for me. The point of it for me is to prove to myself that I can do these things that I don't want to do. And that's what you have to be able to do if you want to create these types of lifestyles. Because you're going to have resistance, you're going to have fear, you're going to have all these things that come at you. And I have dealt with so many of them in my journey. I mean, the business that I had that did 6-figure month within a year, I lost that entire thing 4 months later, lost all my money, went back into massive amounts of debt. Both of my dogs died of cancer, and I lost my grandfather. 3 of those things happened on the same day. And I sat there thinking, well, like, I don't know what to do now. Should I start drinking again? Should I be insanely stressed? I made a decision in that moment to move towards the vision still and to work back towards it. And that's how the whole thing with the Domination deck came about. Was I started writing those. It was like little things to keep my mind sane that ended up being an affirmation card deck. So it's that thing of never knowing how, but always trusting in the situation as long as we're focusing on what really means something to us.
Yeah. Keep the end goal, the end of your GPS in sight, no matter what. Because I mean, I was just on another podcast actually with Jules Schroeder, who you know, and she was talking about how rock bottom is such a silly term to be throwing around, especially in the business space, because you're just going to keep finding new rock bottom. like, oh, this is it. This is the worst as it could get. It's like, that's like challenging the universe to be like, oh, I'll show you another rock bottom.
I know.
But okay, fine. So now like you just have a different route to get back to that vision you've set. So
yeah, she's had some pretty rock bottoms too. It's amazing.
And look at where, people are now that have gone through the craziest stuff.
Yeah, I was just with her actually in Indonesia like a couple weeks ago.
Unconventional life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Heath, you've already given us so many like amazing gems that I know folks can start running with right now, but I want to transition into a little pop quiz rapid fire round. Are you ready for 3 more quick questions?
Yes.
I think you are. You're doing great so far. The first question is, what is one thing you want listeners to do today that you know will help get them closer to their dream life?
Ooh. Implement a habit for the next 30 days of something that makes you uncomfortable. If you can't think of anything, do a cold shower.
Yeah.
Make it to 30 seconds at the end of your shower every day, and then write about what you felt like when you get out. That's important, is to reflect on it. Don't ignore what miraculous thing you just accomplished. Like, write about it. I think just pick something that makes you uncomfortable and step into it. And by the end of that 30 days of you doing it, you'll see how much more powerful you are than you think.
Write about it. Okay. Yeah. Got it. I'm committing. I can do that. It's not going to be cold showers though, because while traveling, I haven't had a hot shower in like 100 days. So
well, you start with the hot shower, and then at the end you crank it to the cold.
All right.
Because I mean, just doing a straight cold shower is that is brutal. But if you start with a normal shower and then you breathe real heavy for 30 to 40 breaths until you feel lightheaded and tingly, and then crank it to cold, it's miraculous.
Okay. Yeah, that's a new approach to my cold shower bearing the cold showers of.
In the breathing process too, you'll start getting all sorts of like cool affirmations and stuff coming into your mind, because your feet, I don't know if you live in a concrete jungle, but for people that live in cities, like touching that water in the bathtub sometimes is the closest thing you get to touching nature. And it's what starts connecting you to being grounded. A lot of us are never grounded because we're walking around with shoes on concrete. And believe it or not, your feet, by touching the grass or the dirt, can absorb massive amounts of antioxidants, far beyond what you can get by eating a tub of blueberries. And so because we never do that, because most of us don't have 10 minutes a day to go stand in the mud, which if you do it for sure. Being in the shower is really the closest thing to it, is standing in that water that's been in pipes, that's been outside. So that's why you get kind of nice thoughts. I'm creating an affirmation system for bathtub crayons for adults that you play with in the shower.
I used to have those. I loved those in high school. I would do my algebra. I would study for my algebra test in the shower. And
it's amazing.
I had a kid brother that had them, but okay, this is amazing. I can't wait to see these. But no, I think, that's super huge, is like reconnecting with nature, water, a grounding practice, and journal about it for 30 days and notice your progress. I think that's great advice. Yes. Question number 2 is, if you could give a gift to every listener, like a tangible resource, what would you give to people? What should we be picking up?
Ooh, that's a good question. A tangible resource.
Yeah, it could be like a book or a podcast, just a resource.
To be completely honest, and I'm not saying this because it's something that I put together, because it's a mass amount of thoughts from people that I have interviewed everywhere. The Domination deck, every single one of those cards is a different subject based on changing your mindset in just a couple seconds. And it is insanely cool and powerful and funny. And that is something that I give to people a lot, but I also go around and put like single cards on people's windshields. And I really love when people tag me saying that they've been handing them out to other people, like it's a pay it forward type thing. So I would, because that is like a conglomeration of everything I've ever learned from any other person into like one small little pack that's quick and easy. I also like the just the whole Tao Te Ching, like Taoism, and just the pocket size book of that, and the little poems that are just stoic. Seneca's writings are also really, really high on my list. Letters from a Stoic, to be more specific, if nobody's read that.
Letters from a Stoic. And yeah, I am all about the Domination deck, so no shame in that plug.
Oh yeah, if anybody wants, also shameless plug, if anybody wants to download some samples of those digitally to look at them, you can. If you go to my site, I'll send you the link. I think it's ragecreate.com/sample pack, but I'm not positive.
Okay. Well, yeah, this takes me to the last question, which is how can people stay connected with you and learn more about what you do? So ragecreate.com. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ragecreate.com is the hub for that in the Domination deck. HeathArmstrong.com is my personal hub. If you guys want that habit tracker, it's on that site. And then at Heath Fist Pumps is social media for me. So HEATH Fist Pumps.
Too good.
And just message, like DM me on Instagram is the quickest way to message me.
Cool.
I don't check Facebook very often. So like if anybody, please do reach out too, because I know how much it means to everybody. Yeah, like harass me, but yeah, no selfies. Well,
even if you're
maybe on Selfie Sunday.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So lots of places people can find you: HeathArmstrong.com, RageCreate.com, and Heath Fist Pumps Instagram, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom, for your gremlin smashing, and for all of the energy you shared with us today, Heath.
Thank you. You're amazing. This pumped me up. I was feeling a little bit drained because I had all these like worky type calls earlier for projects.
Things you have to check off the tracker.
I feel so good now. I feel so good.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, for those of you listening, I will be back next week with another inspiring guest that will help you make your dream life your real life. Until then.
You've been learning how to make your dream life your real life with Hannah Hermanson. To get the resources mentioned on today's show and to listen to past episodes, visit www.dreamlifeisreallife.com.